Dr. Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to, well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. We all struggle, every single one of us, despite what you might see on social media. You might be going through a particularly tough season right now as you're listening, and can I just tell you, I'm so thankful that you're here with us, because my guest today, I just know her wisdom and her experience and her expertise will help you through. One of the most healing things that we can do when we are facing the inevitable challenges of being human is to talk to someone, to share, to have a conversation with perhaps a friend, a partner, a parent, somebody from our community, or a trusted professional. And that could be your GP, a psychologist, perhaps a counsellor. If you're like me, you might choose to talk to different people depending on what's happening. I'll think, right, who is my best person in my inner circle to talk to about this particular challenge? And then I'll make that call. Our guest today is Lesley Klue. She is passionate about mental health. Initially trained as a psychiatric nurse, Lesley is a thinker, a teacher, and a thought coach who creates spaces for people to talk, sort, laugh, plan, unpack stuff, and heal. And on Lesley's website, I just love it that she says, "We'll do it together. It's easier that way." Lesley, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited about our conversation.
Thank you. That's such a cool introduction. Thanks.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm such a fan of your work, and I've been reading your incredible book, 52 Conversations, looking at life from around the corner. And I love that in this book, you've been able to combine the wisdom of a lifetime of conversations and experiences that you've had in your life with clients, with friends, with colleagues, with patients over, so many years. And I just love that one of the things about it that jumps out of every section of the book is this idea of perspective. And I know that the book is titled Looking at Life from Around the Corner. And so can you start by talking to us about this idea of, where did that title come from, I guess?
Well, it was funny because when I was thinking for a tagline for the book, nothing really seemed to leap out, and I tried all sorts of ideas and jotted them down. And then I just woke up one day and I recalled this line about seeing things from around the corner. And I remembered that a friend had commented about that years and years ago. Someone wrote a testimonial for me. And in that testimonial was this phrase that Lesley looks at things from around the corner. And I just thought it would be hard to explain that, but something about it just made sense. And I've always been able to see things from a different perspective to most people I know. And it does feel as if you're just kind of around the edge a little bit, looking at things, the same thing, but from a different perspective. And I just thought, I'm going to use that. And I trusted it and I didn't overthink it. And now that's what it is.
And now that's what it is. And that's the point of it, isn't it? That you're around the corner, that you can sort of see things kind of over the hurdle. Is that the point?
Yes. I think it's however you want to interpret it. It's just the idea that there are hidden perspectives sometimes that we don't automatically just see.
Yes, that's it. And if someone's sort of around the corner, because sometimes, we don't know what's around the corner, do we? We don't know what's at the top of the mountain or on the other side or at the other, through the clouds. And this idea that, if someone like yourself or people can find someone in their life who can almost sort of be around that corner and say, hey, I can help guide you through this challenge or give you a different perspective to look at life's challenges. Because I say this a lot in my work and in my family, although I've eye-rolling teenagers now. So just this idea that we can't be happy all the time. It's not natural. It's not normal. Life is full of meaning, but it's full of challenges, isn't it? And to have somebody to help guide us through when we're struggling can just be one of the most powerful ways to keep our head above water when, we feel like we might be struggling, but also then to kind of get back on dry land and thrive again.
That's right. I call it being in the swamp. I think we're in the swamp a lot. And when we're in the swamp, it's uncomfortable and difficult, and we can't really see our way out of it sometimes. But if you kind of trust that, there's an end to everything, and that if you can find somebody to help you see things from a slightly different perspective, there's a measure of hope. So being able to see things differently and have because it is from around the corner, you can't immediately see it, but you can trust that there's something good that's going to come out of it. And it's not whether it's really good or bad, because they're not really the right words to use. We have to trust that whatever is there waiting for us is the thing that's right for us. And that not everything, like you said, is going to be, we are going to experience emotions that are painful and situations that are not great to be in. But at the same time, we know we can come out of those.
One of the chapters that you wrote, the title is Rejected or Released. And as I was reading that, it reminded me of so many examples in my own life where things did not go according to plan. And I felt so frustrated and upset and disappointed. And also it reminded me of times when friends have been in that situation and I've had a different point of view. I've thought to myself, even though I wouldn't share it because, and perhaps we can come to this idea of listening versus giving advice or sharing perspective, which is what you do as a professional. As a friend, when I'd see friends go through difficult times, I'd think to myself, I just don't think that was meant to be. I think there's something better coming. But it's hard to apply that to ourselves, isn't it?
It is. It takes discipline. And I noticed when I was writing the book that all of these ideas roll out and you write them on the page and people say, well, that's all very well. It sounds great in theory. And I was just reminded so many times that being mentally healthy and having emotional resilience is a discipline like anything else, and you actually have to practice it. Some people are naturally gifted and more able than others, and they don't have to work as hard, but we all have to work hard. And the last 3 years, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, I had to work hard, and that was a bit of a surprise because I thought I'd kind of got the hang of this. But I was also relieved because I thought it never ends and we always have to work hard no matter how well we are. And so it gives us all an even playing field. Actually, this is life and it's okay. And we can all learn to see that just because we might feel rejected, for example, doesn't mean to say it's the universe not saying, it's okay, this wasn't your thing, this wasn't your time. Good on you for trying, you needed to try, but actually your thing is just around the corner. So hang in there. And we can all learn to do that. And then it's self-regulatory after that. We learn because it works, we trust it. It's so much easier that way.
It is, isn't it? I look back to professional directions for me because I sort of feel sometimes people will say, how did you sort of come about doing what you're doing now? And I feel like sort of saying, well, there was a start, then there's a big scribble in the middle, and then here I am. Everything makes sense when I look back, and the thread through everything I've done has been teaching. And I look at some paths I travelled where I really felt strongly that this is me, this is it, and made really great inroads. And I do recall when I chatted to a friend who's a psychologist when I realised, hey, the path that I was on is not the path for me. I'm taking a completely new road. And she said, how long have you been on that path? And I said, about 7 years. She said, oh, that's good for any relationship, don't you think? Time to let it go. And I love that. I love that perspective. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I thought, this is the basket my eggs were in. And then all of a sudden, they kind of got a bit scrambled. And it was the very best thing that I could have done was to let that go and follow this road, and that path has led me to where I am feeling incredibly fulfilled. But it's very, very hard at the time. And this idea of rejected versus released, I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit more about that, please, Lesley.
Well, I think rejection is one of the most painful emotions that people experience, and there's so many aspects to that. But so being able to reframe rejection, like rejection in itself is quite a negative, it's full of negative energy. It feels as if everything is wrong with you. And that's not the truth, of course, but the truth has nothing to do with the way we feel sometimes. So, and that's another thing. But I think reframing rejection and understanding it as this idea of being released enables us to actually think about the fact that we've been saved from something or we've been let go of something. So if you think about a relationship and somebody and you're being left, maybe it's because you are being released from something which is not going to serve you any longer. And while you're in that relationship, for example, you're taking up space which is not free for the person or the thing to come into your life. So when we can understand it as being able to hold space for something that's more right for us or going to serve us better or where we will be happier, and think about the fact that the relationship, that the person that just left, is part of our learning to be in relationships, doesn't mean that we're being rejected. It means that we're being let go of to enjoy the next part of whatever that means for us. Which involves not taking it personally, which involves being able to value ourselves more than just somebody for whom we're not good enough for. It's hugely powerful, but very difficult to see because we've been conditioned to hear rejection and live and experience rejection in this traditional way. And yet there's so many other ways to experience it, and I'm sure other people in other cultures do. I don't even know very much about that stuff. All I know is that the culture I've been brought up in, and the people that I work with, and most of the people I've known in my life, all have this idea about rejection and feel extremely hurt, and yet never think about it any other way. And interestingly enough, my son experienced a rejection about 10 years ago, and we'd already had this conversation a little bit before that, not even a deep conversation, just a chat in passing. And he said, I can't even really remember what the example is, but he came home and said to me, I missed out on that. And then his whole attitude and posture changed, and he said, Mum, I think there's something else better. And it was incredible to just kind of see this in action and think, oh, I must have said something right at some stage because something's registered. And in this moment, it's taken him out of that space of that lower energy of disappointment and upsetness. And he's struggled a little bit with, those things over the years, as many young people have. So it was wonderful to just see him be able to make that shift.
Yes, and to zoom out a little bit and see that this is an opportunity, that this makes space for an opportunity. One of the things that I've said to our kids before is they've been growing up and making new friends, and as they go through those pathways of kindergarten and primary school, and they're both in high school now, every now and again when they've not felt part of something that they wanted to be a part of, I've had this messaging that has been around, obviously a lot of empathy and validation for the hurt if that's being experienced, but also this idea that in our life we cross paths with so many people, and we as people don't connect with everyone we meet. And equally, in the same way, other people don't always connect with us, which we can find very hard to understand. Like, why wouldn't you want to be my friend? But I've just tried to plant this seed that helps them see it from that other point of view, that it takes some of the sting out, even though I know it's really important for our kids to experience what they feel, and it's not to fix it, but it's just about this wisdom, this drip feeding these ideas over time, isn't it? That you don't like and love everyone you connect with. You don't want to be close friends with everyone you connect with. And equally, the reverse is true. And so these ideas that we're talking about today can really make a difference. And like you say, sometimes it's not the big sit down kind of lesson. It's just the passing conversations, the dinner table conversations, the car conversations. One of the things that I know you've talked about before is this idea of zooming out and also following yourself around. And I wonder if I'm asking two very separate questions here, or if these are linked.
Well, everything's linked, but these are slightly different in the sense that when you follow yourself around, what you're doing is making a conscious effort to notice more about you as an individual, you as a creature in the universe that may be similar and will be different from other people. So in a way, you're zooming in to you. And when you're zooming into you, you notice things that you might not have noticed before that provide awareness, of course. And when we're more aware, we're more able to make conscious choices and decisions in our best interests. And I think also when we're more aware about us, we start to be more comfortable about the differences we experience between us and somebody else. And I've got a little chapter in my book called Normal versus Difference, or Difference versus Normal. And I think we become more comfortable with our differences when we can see them more consciously and say, actually, I'm okay with that. I'm okay that I like to take a nap at 2:00 in the afternoon and other people might think that's lazy. I'm okay with that because I need it. And actually, is it okay to do something that you need to do, or do we constantly have to follow the prescriptions of other people? So when you zoom in like that, you become more immersed in who you are. So there's less space to actually be comparing. When we talk about zooming out and perspective, that's a little different, because what that means in the way I talk about it is that when you zoom out, you get the bigger picture. And when you get the bigger picture, it's hard to take things personally because you see that there's so much more context. And so, for example, if you were rejected from a job application, you might feel as if you're the only one. But if you zoom out and you think about all the people you've known in your life who've not got the jobs they wanted, or had the books rejected, or friends, you're like, well, there's actually hundreds of us. And so that doesn't make me feel so bad. So I think sometimes zooming out and getting the bigger picture allows us to understand that we're not alone and that it's not personal. And sometimes I think that when it comes to stress and anxiety and all those things that make us shrivel up and become ultimately experience pain, most of it's around this idea that we don't see the world within the context, the most helpful context. Everything gets so small, it becomes all about us. And that just produces so much insecurity that all of these little techniques, they actually help us to keep some sense of balance. And balance is so required to stay kind of emotionally well. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And I think too, when we can zoom out, like you say, and there is a place for everything, and the idea of zooming in and observing ourselves. And I remember reading a quote or something that was about our character and what we do when nobody else is watching us. But we can watch ourselves. We can see what we're doing. And I remember, I think I shared with you when we met before recording this episode, that I was walking along and I saw some rubbish and I picked it up. But then I looked around to see if someone saw me do it, because there was this little part of me that probably thought, somebody will think I'm a good person if they see that. But it's not about that, because I'm picking up the rubbish because I wanted to pick it up, because that's just who I am. And that's, I want to contribute to my community and to making improvements in the environment where I can. But there's this ego part of us, isn't it? That's where we're often instinctively influenced by, what do other people think of me? And that comparison as well is a part of that picture. And you write so beautifully about comparison. I'd love you to share some of your thoughts around that with us, please.
I think comparison is one of those most poisonous things. If we didn't compare ourselves with anybody, we would be okay with who we were. But because we're also, again, conditioned to compare ourselves, then always we're likely to find ourselves, we're either going to be on either end of the scale. We're going to be less than or more than, because that's the nature of comparison. if you think about the place of the ego, like I kind of think of us as being able to access two places in our lives to live from. We've got the ego space and we've got the heart-soul space. And there's a continuum, and we go up and down on that continuum until we make a decision that where we find our comfort spot. For people who prefer or are naturally driven to live from an ego perspective, and I'm not talking about being egocentric, I'm talking about the amount of space the ego holds in our lives. So comparison definitely sits down that end, because comparison talks in the language of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and you know it uses evaluative language around wanting to be the best, and it's competitive, and so you can't get away from comparison. It causes stress. But if you say, I'm me and there is no one else in the world like me, and so therefore how about I just get on with the business of getting to know me and then doing what I do best, that attitude naturally brings you up the scale a little bit to more of a heart-soul space. And it's not about being soft or mushy or, you know, it's not about not being hard-nosed. It's simply being able to choose a position in life that you want to live from that allows you to be free to do what makes you happy and serves others. Like at the end of the day, what else is left? If we're serving others and it feels good to do that and we're contributing, then there is nothing really to compare. And it doesn't matter how many psychologists there are in the world or how many coaches or how many airline pilots. All of us are needed in those capacities because we all have something slightly different to bring. And the people who need that and want that will find us. So where's the comparison? We can fight for business, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get all the business, because people still choose.
Yes, they do. They do. And it's such a powerful message. And I've found that the older I get, the easier it is. And I had a conversation just with my teenage daughter yesterday, because people in her circle are getting, well, so they say, we shall see, but getting a belly button piercing, or, you know, I mean, and gosh, she's lucky she's got two piercings in each ear, because I've always only had the one, and I'm not a fan of extra. That's just my personal preference. And we did actually make a bit of an agreement that when I surprised her one day and said, let's just go and get your seconds pierced. And we did that. We had a chat. She was so excited. And I said, can we just agree that there's no more talk about anything to do with a piercing until you're at least sort of 15? Anyway, that didn't last more than a few months. But she compares herself to her social circle. And while she's got different pockets of friends in different aspects of her life, and some will go down this, make these choices about piercings, others won't. It's very, very hard for young people, isn't it? Because they just want to fit in. They just want to be like everyone else. And what advice have you got for parents like me who are, I'm standing firm, and we're having lots of open conversations, and she's very respectful. She said to me yesterday, she said, Mum, I could just go and get a piercing, but I wouldn't because I respect you too much. But yeah, it's tough, isn't it, for younger people? I think the older we get, the more we can stand a bit taller and a bit more grounded in who we are and look around at other people and compare ourselves less. But for younger people, it's hard, especially with social media.
It's hugely hard. And I was thinking about this last night, actually. I was thinking about how, especially the way things are at the moment, like how stress and anxiety and comparison and fitting in and the social isolation and social, being part of things is so different for young people these days than it is for even my children, who are sort of late 20s and 30s now, and then me, in my, just 60ish. And I was thinking, I don't know whether you can't apply the same things anymore because the contexts are so different. But I still think there are universal principles here. And when I talk, my youngest is 24, and all my children have involved in social media and have experienced that need to fit in and those kinds of things. And the way I approach it with them is to just ask them, like, what makes you feel the best? Do you feel good when you're comparing yourself with your friends and needing to have the same things as they have? Or what is it? Follow yourself around for a while. See what really makes a difference for you. Does it make you feel stressed? Because there's another bit in my book where I talk about using your emotions as signposts. If you feel stressed about something, this is a signpost. This is the question. It's about asking ourselves a question like, what do I need to be taking notice of here? So if it feels stressful to have to belong to a certain group of friends and be the same as them, and yet it's difficult and lonely and hard and you're experiencing negative emotions around that, the question is, do I want to continue to feel like this, or is there another way? And even when there aren't any answers, but there are questions. And that seems to work best with my children because they simply won't be told what to do. And the minute I say, I think you should do this, boom, I've lost them.
Oh my goodness, this idea that, oh, Lesley, I just adore you, that you're so wise, and this idea that there are questions that we can ask. We can pose these questions, and this idea, it's something we can apply to ourselves. What makes me feel at my best, and when do I light up? What gives me that spark? And we know for our kids that they need a spark. They need these things in their life that make them light up and feel good about themselves. And what we know, don't we, with our own experience and with hindsight, is that these school groups feel like, that's their whole world. And you spend so much time here, but it is a chapter of life that eventually closes, and quite quickly, actually, when you're sort of on the outside looking in, it seems to fly by. But yeah, I think that's a really beautiful way for us to think about this, is to ask the questions. And naturally, the more awareness we have about what makes us feel good, the more inclined we will be to do those things for ourselves, and our children are no different.
And I think as parents, the greatest gift we can give our children are questions that help them to know themselves better. And I can remember when my daughter was about 16 or 17 and she was struggling with some friendships, and she wanted to go around to someone's place, and I said to her, look, it's not up to me to make your friends for you. It's not up to me to tell you who to be friends with. You'll have to figure it out like everybody else. But here are some ways you might want to think about it. When you're with this person, do you feel good? When you're with this person, do you feel supported? Do you feel excited? Do you feel upheld by them? Do you feel valued by them? When you're with this person, do you feel do you feel disregarded? Do you feel pressured? Do you feel like you need to keep up? See, don't do anything about it necessarily. You don't need to not be friends, but you could notice how you feel and invest your time and energy with friends who actually make you feel like it's great to be their friend. And you can just let the other ones slip if you wanted to. And if you didn't, be friends with them anyway. It's all about consciousness. You don't have to, as long as we make conscious choices, it really doesn't matter what we do. As long as we've made the choice, when you're doing things by default or through pressure or obligation, then they're the warnings. Like I was going to say that word obligation in terms of comparison and stuff, like shoulds are related to obligation. And I don't think it's healthy for any of us to make decisions through obligation, because there's no good energy in that. We're not even doing the person a favour or ourselves a favour when we do it that way. We need to be honest and say, am I doing this because I fully choose it, or am I doing it because I feel pressured?
So I was just thinking about this morning in the car, and I was thinking about various invitations in my life by different people over the previous sort of 12 months, and how busy working mum, 2 teenagers, lots of after-school sports, a career that I am just so passionate about. I just work all day and work all night if I, didn't have other things to do, and my own exercise and my husband and family and friends and all of that sort of thing. So much, a really full life. And there have been invitations over the years whereby the previous versions of me, out of obligation and out of an anxiety about letting that person down and feeling like I could hurt their feelings, previous versions of me would have said yes and been feeling a bit resentful about the whole thing, which obviously isn't nice for anybody. But it's so funny that I was reflecting on this just today and thinking I have a sense of pride in myself for making good choices about what I've needed and putting that ahead of maybe what other people might need, whereas previously I wouldn't have done that, and how good it feels to know. And of course, I'm a very generous person, and it's not, I guess I put that caveat in there, but I do a lot for a lot of people. I'd give the shirt off my back to my friends, but also I've been more firm with my boundaries and doing things a bit more on my terms, which it's a gift to yourself to do that, but there's some pain associated with that as well, isn't there?
There is, but it's also a gift to others. And that's what we have to remember. Like years ago, I used to overcommit. And so therefore, because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings and because I didn't want to let people down and because I seriously have been my thing, we all have a thing, don't we, where we have to be something. Well, mine was competent. I had to be competent all the time. And that's long since gone, having worked through it with, masses of therapy and stuff. But anyway, it's gone and I'm pleased about that. And the thing was that overcommitting means that for me, I would pretty much let people down because I couldn't do what I said I was going to do. So one day I thought about this and I thought, I need to learn to say no. But I can't just say no. And I can't just say no because I'm starting to become assertive and say no. There's something about that doesn't sit well with me. I thought maybe I should just tell the truth. And telling the truth is really hard for people because they often don't know what the truth is. So I sat there and I thought, why can't I do this thing that I'm going to say no to? And the reason was that I say to people now, I'm really sorry I can't do it for you because I'm actually unreliable. So I don't want to let you down by saying yes and then not being able to follow through because I value your friendship too much. So I reckon you should go and ask X, Y, or Z or whatever, but I'm not going to put myself in the position of accepting the job or accepting doing this for you when I know that it could be stressful for both of us. And mostly people just laugh. They're like, they find it strange that I just say I'm unreliable because people don't admit to those kinds of things. But actually, I am unreliable and now I don't care. I'm really reliable when it comes to certain things and I'm unreliable when it comes to other things. And I'm mostly unreliable in the ways that I'm not really fully committed to doing that thing. Or there's a little piece of obligation in it, or it might be because I don't want to hurt their feelings or I don't want to be judged. And I think we just have to move through all of those things and then we can just tell the truth. So, my son years ago asked me if he could borrow some money and I said, well, thing is, I don't really want to lend it to you because I don't trust that you're going to pay it back to me when I need it and I don't want to end up resenting you. It's just not worth it. And he was like, okay then. I was like, there you go. That's the truth. The truth is I'd love to lend you some money, but I actually need it back by a certain day. I'm not sure you can do that. No problem. That's not a judgment about you. That's just the thing. We're just looking at it objectively here. I don't want to end up feeling angry with you and I don't want to have to chase you up and I don't want to have to dislike you for a while and I don't want to have to be moaning about it to other people. So, no.
It's quite freeing, isn't it? The truth will set you free. I recall saying to the kids before, if there's an invitation or if there's something happening that in a way to try to protect someone, they might say, oh, I'm not available on that date, or I've got something else on, or I won't be able to get there on time or something. But what I think we find is if we're not honest is that there are workarounds. And so if you do say, oh, I'm just not available on that date, then the reply might be, well, how about we change the date? Or I can't get there on time. Oh, that's okay. Other people aren't coming on time either. And so in trying to be protective of the other person, you actually can sort of find yourself in a position where you've kind of backed yourself into a corner and you'll end up perhaps doing the thing that you didn't want to do, or trying to find another way to get out of it, which becomes, really obvious very quickly. And so, yeah, it's very complex, isn't it? It's very complex.
It is, but you can learn things, can't you? Like much of this work, I reckon, and I find a lot of the time I'm helping people to sit down and write out responses that they can make that reflect the truth of what they're trying to say. You kind of have to practice it. So with the party one, for example, or being invited out, you could say, oh, I'm not sure if I can, if I could get to that. And that's true. I'm not going to get to that. However, let's make a time to do something together a week later to celebrate or whatever. So if you're a person that doesn't really like parties, for example, and you'd much rather enjoy somebody's company one-on-one, having an alternate, just quite simply saying, oh, I'm not going to make it that night. Let's do this on X is often enough to suffice and still be truthful without hurting anyone's feelings. But it does require some thought because we don't, unless we get good at it, then we don't have those answers on hand often, and we just go to the default ones, which are the ones you mentioned, which don't quite work often. They don't feel right at an honest level.
That's right. That's exactly right. So one of the things that I would really like to ask you about that you wrote is destination versus direction when it comes to emotions. And yeah, I'd really like to sort of change tack a little bit and get you to speak to us, please, about your conversations and your thinking around this chapter in your book.
Yes, well, I'm just opening it up now because I kind of just wanted to make reference to it. I think the thing about oftentimes people experience emotions and that's it. It's like this emotion knocks on the door, comes in and sits around and it's going to stay for as long as whatever. And we're not thinking, so it feels like you're the destination for that emotion. And for some people, of course, they're the destinations for a lot of negative emotions and painful emotions. Rather than us opening up the door to that emotion and saying, okay, you're just passing through. And what in passing through, you're not here to stay. So what is the purpose of you passing through? Again, it's a whole different focus. So I think it's that chapter where, yes, we look at being able to actually interpret what an emotion means. And I think, like, for example, I've got here, anger masks sadness. So when people get angry, rather than holding on to that anger, a useful question is what am I actually sad about? You don't even need to recognize that you're sad to ask that question because the minute you ask it, the answer comes. And oftentimes when people have asked that question, well, actually always there's an answer. People will be really angry or, then they'll say, I'm really upset about this. And I'll be like, what are you really sad about? And I think using that word sad, and then there it is. And so the anger's been a message, really. And the anger's been the emotion that's come through to help you identify something else. And then, thinking about when we're sad, we can sit still and we can just breathe through it and we can just accept it. We can just think, I'm sad about this. We don't have to do anything about it. And if we welcome it and we sit with it, which I think I've alluded to in other chapters, then when it's ready to go, it will. And we can't hurry these things up and that's another thing about us in society. We think that we can control all of these things. We think that we can just dictate what emotions come and go. And if we don't like them, we can take some drugs or we can, drink some alcohol. We can go and have sex with someone and boom, it's all sorted. But no, they're not going to leave us alone until we actually start to take notice because they're fundamentally a functional part of us. They're there for a reason. And I think thinking about it and looking at it this way allows us to actually just get on with the business of managing ourselves and moving on. And then you've got the rejection and the confusion and loneliness and everything means something different. Like confusion alerts us to seeking more clarity. Loneliness reminds us that we're neglecting ourselves. We're not lonely because no one else out there likes us. We're lonely because a piece of us has lost its connection to ourself. And these all require conversations. I mean, in and of themselves, people could hear this and say, yes, that sounds right. But then there's a wee bit more, isn't it? It's like, but how and what do I do? And that's all very well. But when I'm feeling that way, what are my next steps? And so, yes, there are things to do, but it's the beginning.
It is the beginning. And what you've been talking about with this idea of emotions as visitors, it's a really powerful metaphor, because the emotions that we don't like are the ones we want to get rid of. You know, they're the visitors we want to just like basically say, hello, no, and shut the door. However, yes, it's, you know, whereas it's like if it's joy, if it's contentment, fulfillment, happiness, surprise, assuming good surprise, we will say, come on in, let me make you a cuppa. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. And yet those emotions leave too. I love this metaphor, and I also love this idea that, and a previous guest, Dr. John Forsyth, talked about willingness. And this, it's very important that we have this willingness to experience how we feel, because they are important and they are there to tell us something. And just last night I was at my parents'. We were talking about pets because I was trying to convince them that a little puppy around their house would be a really great addition, because I could play with it and then leave it for them to train. But no, in all honesty, you know, Dad said to me, hey, you know, when we lost our German Shepherd, we just decided that was it. And a huge part of that was the pain. Obviously, doesn't suit them as retirees to have a pup now, but the pain of losing a beloved pet who's a family member was something that they agreed they would never go through again. And yet those emotions are there to show us that we loved and that we had so much joy and so much connection and fun and such a companion, such a beautiful companion. And so I love to talk about this. I love that you've raised this, because for listeners today, it's we all have pain in our lives, but the pain that's in our lives, it revolves around things that are important to us. And so there is a lot to be taken from what we feel. And when we just kind of try to shove it out the door and shut the door while they've put their toe in the door and they're like, hang on, I have to come in. And eventually if we try to shut it out too much, they find a way in, and it's all a bit overwhelming and a bit tricky, isn't it? And so I love that you've been able to share this beautiful metaphor and this idea that we don't have to roll out the red carpet, but we can have this willingness to say, well, you're here, that's okay. I feel sad about this, and that's okay. And to also know that you can experience that feeling and still move forward and still do what's important. We don't have to sit on the couch with that feeling and hold their hand. We can take them with us. We can be kind and compassionate to ourselves.
And before it's important to recognise that every single emotion has another side. In order to have experienced pain, we will have experienced the flip side of it. So we can, at any moment, we can recognise that we're feeling pain, but we can also recognise the other emotions that we can choose to go to. We can choose how long we want to sit with things. And the pain can be in the forefront or it can be in the background. We don't need to be overtaken by them. We can just allow them to be where they need to be and then move on. And then the pain can come and visit again. And we can remember that pain, like the pain of losing somebody, also is a reminder of how much joy we had with them. The pain of the pet, how much joy we had with them, how being able to accommodate both those emotions helps us grow emotional resilience. It helps us grow stronger. We bring more to the world in that space, and that this is the job of life. Life is a job.
And the world keeps spinning, doesn't it? I remember when my husband Peter lost his father over 20 years ago, and I remember going to the local bakery just to get some rolls and looking around. It was a bit like it's always like I was on the outside looking in. I was a bit, not dissociated isn't the right word, but I was experiencing a huge amount of pain. And I looked around, I thought, how are you all getting on with your life when we're going through this? How is it that you're just coming and getting a coffee, getting a vanilla slice, as delicious as they are? How can you all be just going about, don't you know what's just happened? It's a very hard thing to be a human, isn't it? It's very hard. But that pain, it's not there now. I reflect on Pete's dad. I was so delighted that I got to meet him, and we had a great bond. And I know that he thought I was pretty good for his boy, and his boy's pretty good for me too. So, you know, I love that he knew Peter and I had that love way back then. But that pain has eased, and I can reflect, and he wasn't my dad, of course, but I can reflect on that time with more distance, and it's not like it once was. It doesn't mean we'll never, just because time passes doesn't mean that the hurt won't still be there. But I guess as a final passing kind of insight, what would you like to share on that note before we sort of finish up for today?
You mean to share around the idea of pain?
Yeah, this idea that I can look back at painful experiences in my life and time has helped. But for some people, and I know it will be different, you know, when I lose one of my parents, and you know, I doubt whether that hurt will ever heal in ways at all. But yeah, this idea that time does help, but for listeners who are still experiencing pain of things that have happened a long time ago, I just wondered whether or not you had any thoughts around that.
Well, the thought that sprung to mind, and it might be just a wee bit abstract, but it might help, and that is that quite often when I think about life, I think about the oak tree as a metaphor. And I don't know why I think about an oak, because it's other great trees too, like kaoris and elms. But when I think about the oak, and I think about how big it is and how grand it is and how strong it is and how protective it is and how gnarly it is and how it's withstood storms of life, I'm in awe of it. And I think those that have experienced great pain, they're like those oak trees, and they can either be the ones that everybody can look to and be protected by and see as solid, sturdy people of experience, and they're reliable. I can't even really find the words, but I think that's how people could see themselves when they've battered life's, traversed life's kind of hardships, whether that's been deaths or fires or earthquakes. And there are so many people out there that are experiencing such an enormous amount of pain, but we still have to find a way to live through it. And we can either live shriveled up and dried up, like, a small plant struggling to survive, or we can say, bugger it, I'm going to be that oak. Like, if anyone can be this oak, I can. And I think that's a privilege, because we're not going to escape it. Everybody has pain, like you say. So let's think about how to be the best person we can as a result of that. Now, when you're in pain, you're in pain. So no one's going to be thinking, I'm in pain and I'm going to be an oak tree. But just something to hold on to for those, everybody comes out of it through time.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Lesley. Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I feel like you are a gift, and that your book is a beautiful gift, 52 Conversations. And I haven't read all of them yet, so I've still got more to look forward to. But your time here with us today is so appreciated. And for you as listeners, I really do know that there is a pearl of wisdom, a little nugget for each and every one of you, in different nugget for different people. But you've shared so much and so generously. And so if people want to learn more about you or work with you as a coach, how can they connect with you?
Just simply go to my website, which is www.lesleyklue, LESLEYKLUE, as in give us a clue with a K. You can just contact me via there. And I love to have conversations, as you've probably guessed by now. And am happy to explain everything through a conversation. I work on Zoom a lot, so no big deal. And yeah, that's how you can get hold of me.
Thank you. And yes, and if you haven't guessed, listeners, from Lesley's beautiful accent, that she is just across the water in beautiful New Zealand. So, Lesley, thank you again. I'm very, very grateful to you, and I know our listeners today will be as well.
Thank you for having me and for the opportunity to chat about this. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolute joy. And thank you again. And thank you, listeners. And I really do urge you, if you do need somebody to talk to, this whole conversation has been about conversations. And so please reach out to someone if you are in need of somebody to lean on, somebody to listen to you, somebody to help you perhaps see from around the corner. And of course, Lesley is one of those people that you could turn to as well. So thank you for your time. Thank you always for being here with me and my wonderful guests. I always feel so grateful for your time. So thanks again, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.